So I clicked on a YouTube video the other day, and the speaker said, Aleister Crowley, the Satanist. I am so sick of hearing ignorant people make claims that just aren't true. I have honestly been wanting to do this video for years now, because years ago I was a member of the Order of the East Temple, OTO, also known as Ordo Templi Orientis. That is a social order. It's like a gnostic church that Crowley was a big part of. He was not the founder, but he was a big part of its development. And I'm still friends with many people in that order, and it's a pretty awesome order. So I have seen some pretty nasty comments pop up on my videos and other people's videos regarding the wickedest man in the world, Aleister Crowley. So let's talk about the top myths and the top truths regarding Aleister Crowley. So myth number 1, Aleister Crowley, the wickedest man in the world. The British press dubbed Aleister Crowley the wickedest man in the world. We know how the media works, right? I hope you do. It was a lot of rumors, a lot of tabloids. He also liked to get attention. I'll get a little bit more into this a little bit later, but Betty May was known for a lot of the tabloid information, so quite a bit of the really intense bad stuff that came out about him. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But anyways, a little bit of history about him. He actually studied at Cambridge. He studied philosophy, moral philosophy, and also literature. That's all I know. He probably did much more than that. But he was also the president of the chess club there, and he was very well traveled. He traveled a lot and studied all kinds of religions and philosophy and yoga. He was also a big part of the occult in the early 1900s. He entered the Golden Dawn. If you've never heard of the Golden Dawn, definitely look up the Golden Dawn. And so they are a huge part of like what I teach in terms of rituals. Aleister Crowley was a big part of a lot of development in terms of Western mystery schools. From the Golden Dawn, he was a big part of, and then he got into the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis, which means the Order of the East Temple. And he was a big part in that development. He developed the AA, which was the educational order, just like the Golden Dawn. I say just like the Golden Dawn, but very similar to the Golden Dawn. He was big into yoga. He brought a lot of yoga into the AA and studied Buddhism and Hinduism and Kabbalistic practices, Hermeticism. He was into alchemical magic and Enochian magic and things like that, the Goetia, I guess. But he was not the wickedest man in the world, which we're going to talk about some other myths that will show you why people called him that a little bit and how he's really not. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Means you should do whatever the hell you want. Aleister was known for teaching about the higher self and about the will, divine will from the higher self, and living your life purpose. And that has nothing to do with ego. So I'm sorry if you think that or you somehow put that out there to other people, you're wrong. I have seen so many people that know nothing about high magic and nothing about Aleister Crowley go and spout this idea that divine will has anything to do with, your ego. And he never was teaching about the ego. He was always teaching about divine will, divine higher self, holy guardian angel, your soul's purpose. So he was all about high magic and the idea that magic is the art and science of, creating change in your world based on your divine soul purpose. Crowley has been a major influence in the world of magic, whether you practice high magic, low magic, like witchcraft, Wicca, chaos magic, any of that. It's all pretty much been influenced, at least to a small degree, by Aleister Crowley. In fact, one of the founders of the modern witchcraft tradition we know as Wicca, one of the major founders, he was largely influenced by Crowley originally. So again, his teachings centered on the divine will, the higher self, getting in touch with that, ascending and awakening. And he's taken out of context quite a bit by people, especially people that are way too literal, which we'll get to in a moment. So some reporters out there will put information out there, for shock value. Others will do it out of pure ignorance because they don't know how to do research properly. Anyways, let's move on to the next myth. Myth number 3. Aleister Crowley was a Satanist, and he called himself the Great Beast 666. Truth. Nope, not a Satanist. But yes, he actually did go by the Great Beast 666. In fact, his parents were devout Christians, evangelical Christians. His father was a Quaker originally, and his mother actually used to refer to him as the Beast when he was growing up, the Beast from Revelations. He was pretty obsessed with the book of Revelations growing up, the Bible in general, but he did go by the Beast. He did do that. According to Keith Reddy of the book One Truth and One Spirit, Aleister Crowley's Spiritual Legacy, which this is a wonderful book, by the way, if you want more information about the spiritual legacy of Aleister Crowley. He actually states that Aleister Crowley often employed such imagery as the beast and the number 666 in an effort to take an idea that was culturally accepted as negative and turn it on its head. He believed that by identifying the natural opposite to an idea, a person could break through to a greater understanding of the world. He considered this to be part of the great work, the mingling of the contradictory elements in a cauldron. So to fully understand an idea, you must understand both the positive and negative aspects. It's duality, right? That's Hermeticism. And as you know, shadow work is a really big part of alchemical magic, of this high magic work. It's about changing yourself through embracing parts of yourself that are hidden, or parts of yourself and humanity as a whole that we don't want to necessarily look at or embrace. In fact, he subjected himself to intimate practices that were, demeaning to him, so that he said he wanted to experience, in a way, right? This is not a quote, but he wanted to experience deep shame, to experience it, to understand it. As a person of philosophy and studying humanity and psychology and religion and trying to understand the world and spirituality, he would really dig into things. He was a pretty extreme character. And to give you a little more of an idea of his nature, when he was on a walk with his father one day when he was a child, and his father said to him, "You see those stinging nettles, the clump of stinging nettles over there? Stay away from it." I have it right here. "Will you take my word for it, or would you rather learn by experience?" And of course, Crowley said, "I'd rather learn from experience," and jumped into the stinging nettles. That's Crowley. Myth number 4. Crowley sacrificed babies. As I was saying earlier, he was a philosophy major, and he was extremely intelligent and eccentric, quite the jokester, prankster, quite a bit sly and rebellious. He did not sacrifice babies. He was simply using analogy. In fact, this is a statement by him. "How many times must I tell them that my admission to killing children only referred to the near constant self-pleasuring of my youthhood? My uncoupled," I can't say that word on here, "my lonesome and spilled seed." Okay? So it wasn't about him killing kids. It was about him spilling his seed. That's what it was about. And it was a joke. The idea of animal sacrifice is one up for debate and hearsay. He denied it. However, Betty May, she was someone that he had some issues with, a lot of drama, and she actually went to the press and stated a bunch of things that he denies completely, and says she was not even around when they were doing rituals and things like that. So if you want to read more about that research, those facts and the different people and what they said, that would be in this book right here. This is Perdurabo, which was Aleister Crowley's name in the Golden Dawn, and it's by, I think his name's Robert Kaczynski, The Life of Aleister Crowley. And this is 20 years of research that he did, Mr. Kaczynski, and it is absolutely fantastic. I have not finished it. He actually wrote this in the style of a novel, like an adventure story. It's a lot of research though. Excellent book. I highly recommend this for your library if you're into reading on the occult. And I want to just say that, Mr. Kaczynski has a PhD and he's a student of the Western Hermetic tradition as well. So he has that. He has the PhD for research ability, and he also spent 20 years on the book. So highly recommended. Myth number 5. Aleister Crowley was a German spy. Well, according to Mr. Reddy, Aleister Crowley actually played a role in subverting the German propaganda efforts by writing articles for 2 pro-German journals, including the International and the Fatherland. And they were supposed to be very outlandish articles that he wrote to kind of create this, to get people's attention, to get the United States attention, according to this book, this research book. And he was trying to get attention. This is what he was saying, that he actually said, Aleister Crowley said that he was a British spy. I heard that he said that in some of these books, but I don't know if that's true. I just know that he did make that claim, that he was actually trying to help, his homeland, and he was trying to get help from the United States by writing, crazy articles and doing all this stuff. But he was supposedly very much against that whole idea of the, German propaganda efforts that were going on. Myth number 6. Crowley was a sexist. Truth? Well, he was pretty progressive for his day, and he was for women's rights. He was against fascism, things like that. But he was raised as, he was a white male, a very wealthy white male, raised in the Western world of the patriarchy back when that's just how people were. So no, I'm not going to sit here and say he wasn't a sexist, because according to some things that I've read and heard, from my perspective, I would say he was, especially if you take it from today's, outlook. He was publicly bisexual, and that was also a big issue back then. A lot of people demonized him because he was publicly bisexual. You have to remember, that wasn't even accepted in the United States, like, in the UK and stuff 50 years ago. Think about 100 years ago, or 60, 70 years ago. It was before the 60s revolution. This was like the early 1900s. So coming out as he did, he was pretty progressive in a lot of ways. But yes, he still did have certain mindsets that were of that Western culture back then. It's very true. And it's also unfortunate. But think about if he was, born and raised today. He would probably be very different as a person in terms of that whole idea of being sexist. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'd love to hear your comments about that. Myth number 7. Crowley was a crazy drug addict. Truth. He was actually on opioids, and we know how bad those can be. He was on them supposedly, I read that, from the research, that he was on them for asthma and pain. But he did start using them for ritual practices later. And it wasn't like he was, completely crazy. It wasn't like that at all. He was very spiritual, and he was practicing to see, you've heard of Tim Leary, right? Tim Leary is known for using drugs to tap into spirituality more, right? He was also influenced a little bit by Crowley and stuff, if you ever want to look into that. But anyways, he did take drugs, but it wasn't what some people say in the tabloids about him. Not at all. And here's a little bonus for everybody. His name is pronounced Crowley, like the bird, and his name that he was born with was Edward Alexander Crowley. But he changed it later based on some esoteric studies he did in terms of names. And he read that depending on a certain rhythm, and I'm not going to go into the specifics here, you can look it up, but depending on a certain rhythm, you actually will become more famous. And so he changed it to Aleister Crowley, and hey, he is super famous even today. So anyways, yes, Aleister Crowley definitely had flaws, but he made some pretty brilliant contributions to the world of the occult that we know today, and had major influence in a lot of different practices like high magic, low magic, chaos magic, etc. Crowley was a fascinating character, but not the one that the tabloids have fabricated. And if you want to really know the truth, if you want to understand it more because you're interested in magic, but he puts a bad taste in your mouth because of things you've heard, read these two books here that I mentioned, or his book Confessions, if you like poetic, romantic type writing that's very, very archaic in terms of today's writing style. I really don't enjoy reading poetry, and I don't enjoy reading like old literature unless it's rewritten in today's language. So I prefer books like this, biographies and things, instead of reading the original. But if you want to, you can always look up Confessions by Aleister Crowley. So Crowley was well-traveled, well-read. He was a mountaineer. I don't know how good of a person he was, honestly. I just know that he was a great mind, you could say. He was very intelligent, very eccentric, and practiced ritual yoga and meditation like a true monk. And he aspired to be a prophet of the new age, and he wanted the world to change for the better. So his stories are bizarre, but be careful not to believe everything you hear. So thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click like. If you hated it, click dislike. And if you have some research you'd like to share with me, please go ahead. Again, I haven't finished these books yet, but I'll have to do another video coming up after I do. So, bye for now.